Chapter 6. Nature Knows Best, or Man Knows Better. After another beautiful morning ritual, Pono informed me that we were going to visit a friend who was preparing to give birth very soon. Getting a glimpse into the healthcare system was something high on my list when I came here, so I was eager to tag along. I figured a hospital would be a great place to see first. "So how close is your friend to having the baby?" I asked as we drove. "I spoke with her mother yesterday, and she said it will likely be today." "Did she ask you to come for a specific reason?" "Just for my blessing," Pono responded. "She's a close friend of mine who I've worked with in ceremony many times." "Oh, gotcha," I replied. "Where's the hospital? Are we close?" "The hospital?" she asked. "You mean emergency care? It's on the other side of the valley, in Equilibrium." "Okay, then where are we going now? Has she not been admitted yet?" "Sandra, hospitals are for treating injury and serious illness. Giving birth is neither of those things," she explained. "We're going to her home on the mountainside." "Her home? Why?" "Home is where we welcome our babies to the earth. This is an entirely new dimension, and our first priority is to prepare an environment to help that transition be as smooth as possible," Pono explained. "I would have thought the priority is the safety of the mother and baby." "It is, and that starts with the environment. The baby only enters once, and that moment deeply shapes their perception of this realm. This event is heavily imprinted into the spirit of the baby, and every detail matters," she responded as we turned up a dirt road. "Within seconds of arriving, the baby will know this physical plane as either safe, secure, and loving, or dangerous, scary, and violent." "I agree with what you're saying, but how is this safe and secure?" I asked. "If the mother feels unsafe, wouldn't the baby feel that too?" "Why would the mother feel unsafe?" She raised her eyebrows. "I mean, anything could happen out here, and we are so far from any of the medical technology we would need in an emergency. Is it really worth the risk?" "What is the risk, exactly?" Pono asked back. "I mean, there's a million things that could happen during delivery that could be risky for both mom and baby. My sister is an OB/GYN. I hear horror stories all the time. You know how often deliveries require medical intervention in her hospital?" "How often?" "Well, I don't know the exact statistics, but very often. Over 30% of babies are delivered by C-section, half of those being emergency C-sections," she stated, answering the question for me. "And if you calculate how many others require epidurals, Pitocin, or other medical intervention, it would include just about all of them." "Yeah, exactly," I replied, a bit confused. "That's my point. With such a high risk, why wouldn't you want to be in a hospital?" Pono let out a long sigh, clearly preparing for one of her lessons. "Sandra, you just told me that the hospital is statistically the most likely environment to require emergency intervention. Yet you are wondering why I wouldn't want to deliver a baby there," she said as she turned and looked at me with a gentle expression of confusion. "I'm not sure how to answer that." "I'm just emphasizing how dangerous and risky it is to have a baby," I explained. "We've come such a long way in this field. Why would you choose not to use these advancements?" "Advancements is not the word I would use," Pono replied. "The United States has the second worst newborn death rate in the developed world, and out of the 7 countries with the most births per year, it's dead last." I sat in shock. I was unaware of these statistics. "And that's just the babies, but you also have one of the highest maternal mortality rates among industrialized nations." "Really?" I asked. "Are you sure?" Does this sound like a topic I might not be sure of myself? That was a clear no, so I didn't answer. I just continued asking questions. "Why do you think this is? Why would it be so bad?" I asked. I would need about a week to answer that question fully, but we're almost at her house, so I'll give you the overview. We bumped along the dirt path as she spoke. "To start, you have to zoom out and look at the big picture," she began. "Your sister is an obstetrician, right?" "Yes." "If you had to guess, how many times during her education did she observe and study a completely natural birth? No machines, No monitors, no medical intervention whatsoever. I don't know, was my answer. Probably zero, she replied, because that's not the goal. It's not even in the sphere of possibilities at most hospitals and birthing centers. A natural birth is not even a thought in anyone's mind. Instead, sadly, the default protocol is a highly medicalized, overly intrusive process in which the mother is considered a patient in need of medical care. She looked over toward me. Can you see the fundamental flaw in this? That the people responsible for delivering babies into this world are not even aware of what that looks like in its natural form. You're saying they don't know what a natural birth looks like? Come on, you know that's not true. Well, you'd only need to see one natural birth to realize that lying on your back with your feet in the air is not at all how we are designed to do it. I dropped my head and looked up at her with a look that told her I wasn't really convinced of this being part of the problem. Well, maybe the hospital beds aren't the best, I answered, but that doesn't seem like a valid reason for a mom not to want to deliver in the hospital. It might just seem like a small detail, but it tells a big story about the environment you are in and the methodology the caretakers subscribe to, she replied. I tried processing this information more openly, like I had promised yesterday. Like usual, Pono was convincing, so I wouldn't say I disagreed, but I was having trouble wrapping my head around it all. So you're saying those poor statistics are all because the mom is in the wrong position? I asked. No, not at all. I was just giving an example of an extreme flaw at the most fundamental level, she answered. The reason for the mortality and emergency rates goes far beyond that. Okay, so what would you say it is? It's because birthing is not held as a sacred process, she said. It's a business. A for-profit business. And like any good business, they are focused on efficiency over everything else. That means they need the rooms at full capacity, they need everyone moving along quickly, and they need to make sure each visitor is running up as big of a bill as possible. We pulled into the driveway, and she put the car in park. Let me paint you a very common scenario, she started. A new mom is admitted to the hospital because her contractions have started. She's ready, but she's scared, like all new mothers in this environment, because she's been repeatedly warned of the dangers and risks over the last 9 months. She gets checked into a room with bright white lights, cold furniture, and usually at least one other mother. The energy all around is anxious, if not frantic or even chaotic at moments. She's constantly being monitored with all different devices and determined by others whether or not she is able to get the job done. As the contractions pick up, so does the pain, and the standard procedure is to strongly recommend an epidural. Like most women, she accepts. Now the pain is getting better, but guess what? The contractions have slowed because she's lost all sensation in her pelvis. So instead of gradually tuning in more deeply to the signs and signals coming from her body to ensure a safe birth, she's now numb to nearly all of it. She's energetically disconnected from the baby during the most important moments in each of their lives. A short while later, the nurses determine that she's failing to progress. Failing. No one stops for a moment to think about either the short-term or long-term effects a word like this can have on a scared mother. Instead, they just proceed to the next step in the process, Pitocin. Why Pitocin? To help get those contractions going again. You know, the ones that stopped after the epidural. So Pitocin is administered, and the contractions start again. But they don't just start back up, they come on stronger, faster, and more intense than before. Some might even say unnaturally intense. Now Mom is disconnected from her body and overwhelmed by the contractions. The energy in the room is of worry and concern, and the room is still bright and cold with strange buzzing and beeping sounds all around. How do you think baby is feeling? Do you think baby is ready to surrender itself to this new world of love and safety? Definitely not, I replied, starting to see her point. Of course not, so it holds on. It tries to retreat back into the safety of the womb. And so the doctor comes in and determines the baby is in distress, and the best thing to do is opt for a cesarean. It's not what Mom wanted coming into this, but it's what the doctor ordered, and he knows best. Plus, it's quick and easy. Not to mention, it significantly reduces the risk of being sued and drastically increases the hospital bill, but those are just side notes. So off to the operating room for a C-section that's required because the baby is in distress, because of the Pitocin that was administered, because of the contractions that stalled, because of the epidural that was given that disconnected mom from her baby at the very beginning of the process. And the story isn't complete without a heavy dose of empirical code. Thank God for all of this amazing medical care. Otherwise, it could have been bad. I just shook my head. None of this had ever occurred to me, but now it was upsetting to think of how many moms go through this traumatic process. And that's a typical mild experience, she finished. A lot worse has happened. I know. Like I said, I've heard the stories from my sister, I replied. So you think my sister is causing a lot of these horror stories? It's not her fault, Sandra. She's just doing what she's been taught. This is how she was trained. Blaming the doctors themselves is not the answer. We just need to bring awareness to the situation and have this conversation, she answered. This is actually the root of all the problems in your land, she continued. The birthing process is the root of all of our problems, I asked, a bit confused. She made some really valid points on the flaws in our methods, but I was not ready to pinpoint this as the root of all our problems. No, not specifically, but the mindset in general, she answered. What do you mean? There's only one of two ways in which a person can see the world, she said. It's either nature knows best or man knows better. And while there are still some people who still hold the truth of nature, the institutions of your land have made it very, very clear on their belief that man does in fact know better. She shook her head slowly in disappointment. This is a very dangerous lens to see the world through, Sandra. You must be aware of the inevitable consequences of such a belief. Okay, I will be mindful of it, I answered. Plus, this is about a lot more than just delivering natural or not, she said, returning to the original topic. This is a rite of passage for both mom and baby that can shape their life. Rite of passage? Of course. There is no process more sacred and more empowering for a woman than birthing her baby. It's a moment for a woman to feel her strength and power like never before, and fully tap into her primordial wisdom, she explained. But instead, Mom leaves feeling like a failure. She was just a passenger on a ride and others made the decisions for her. Now what? Now she has to go be a mom. A role that requires unbreakable confidence and a deep, intuitive connection to herself and to her baby. A connection that is established throughout the pregnancy and supposed to be eternally imprinted during the birth. We got out of the car and began walking toward the house. Let's take a moment to hollow our energy before entering, she told me, and we paused for a few deep breaths. We walked into the house, and there was a pregnant woman lying naked on the floor, with two other women sitting next to her. She was clearly deep into the birthing process, as she didn't say much or even look toward me. She just lay on the floor, rubbing her belly. Pono walked right over and held her hand. They didn't speak. She just embraced her hand, closed her eyes, and whispered some kind of prayer. I quietly introduced myself to the other two women who were the mother and sister of the new mom. Pono then reached into her bag, took out some kind of dry leaves, and burned them. She took a large feather and waved the smoke around the room, again whispering a prayer. Next, she knelt down and placed both of her hands on the belly, a position she remained in for many minutes as her and the family sang native Okablo songs. I didn't know them, but I hummed along, and I could feel an amazing energy flowing through the room. Although clearly a physically uncomfortable scenario for the mother, the connection in the room was deep, and the emotional state was incredibly soft and warm. I felt my eyes watering as I witnessed the beautiful scene. Finally, Pono picked up a deerskin drum and circled the room while playing. The mom began tossing and turning on the floor while moaning, clearly feeling the baby working its way toward the finish. After about 10 minutes of this, Pono kissed the mom and her belly one last time, and we left. As we walked down the driveway toward the car, I asked Pono, "What happens from here?" "Now she waits for baby," she replied. "Baby knows exactly when to come, and mom will know exactly what to do." We opened her door, looking across the top of the car at me. Mother knows best. "We just have to make one quick stop on the way out," Pono shared as we exited the driveway. It was amazing to see Pono transition so quickly back and forth between spiritual teacher and her regular self. Fine with me. Where? At my husband's studio in Equilibrium. He has one of my favorite instruments and keeps forgetting to bring it home. "Oh, good, I'll finally get to meet him," I explained. "I wish," she said, "but he's not going to be there. He's on site at Harmonia this week preparing for the event." "Oh, right. We'll just grab it and head out." "How far is it?" "Well, if we go through the main entrance around the mountain, it's quite far. But there's a little footpath through the backside of the mountain that can get us there in about a 10-minute walk." We drove several miles toward the ocean before pulling over. We got out of the car and made our way toward the woods onto a small footpath that went right down the side of the mountain. It was very narrow and rocky, but Pono moved with such grace she looked like she was taking a stroll on the beach. I did my best to keep up, which wasn't easy. Luckily, it wasn't too far before we came upon the back door of a small building tucked in the jungle. We walked up the back steps and opened the door, and when we did, Pono stopped short as we saw 3 men standing on the far side of the building at the front entrance. "Oh, he is here. I wasn't expecting that," she said. "Let's give him a second." "Okay," I replied as I watched the man who must have been her husband saying goodbye to 2 other men. Because of the angle of the doorway, I couldn't really see them from where I was standing. When he turned and walked back into the main room, we entered also. He looked up, a bit surprised. "Pono, hey." "Hello, honey," she replied. "This is Sandra." "Oh, fantastic. We've been awaiting your arrival," he exclaimed as he hurried over. "I'm Machuca," he introduced himself, followed by a long hug. "So nice to meet you." "Likewise," I responded. "I'm sorry I haven't been around much this week. I've been preparing for Harmonia. It's our big annual festival." "Yes, Pono has told me a little bit about it," I said cheerfully. "I'm looking forward to checking it out." "Oh, you'll be coming to the event? Fantastic," he responded. "And will you be sitting in ceremony?" "Oh, I don't know," I answered as I looked down at my feet. "I haven't decided about that part yet." "Okay, well, you'll know when you know," he answered politely. "Just trust." We walked toward his collection of instruments. "I didn't think I'd see you here today," Pono said. "You got lucky, I guess," he said with a laugh. "I haven't been here all week, but had one appointment on the schedule I didn't want to cancel. Then Alacoa stopped by as well. Lots of surprise visitors today." "What was Alacoa doing here?" she asked. "He was just here to talk." Pono paused for a moment to see if he was going to continue. "About?" she followed up. He sighed. "It's a lot to get into. Chief Inganyama has put him on a big assignment." "How big?" "Let's just say he's working through a lot of resistance," he answered, "and it's not unwarranted." "That big?" "That big," he said as he began packing up his bag. Chief told him that his new film is going to be set viral across the world. "Outside of Okablo?" she asked. "Yes." Pono tilted her head and blinked her eyes rapidly, trying to piece together what Machuca was saying. "Well, what's it about? Why is he worried?" "He couldn't tell me. He was with a Delphin." "So what? That shouldn't matter. He knows we can be transparent in front of the Delphins." "Apparently not with this," he answered. They paused and looked at each other, but didn't say anything. They were clearly concerned. "All right. Well, anyway, I'm here to get my jaw harp," Pono said, obviously wanting to change the subject. "You keep forgetting to bring it home before you leave." "Oh, right. It's over here." Pono picked up a small instrument and then embraced Machuca in a long hug, before we made our way out.
Hello, family and friends. Just one brief interruption today. Another short story behind the story. One time, at the end of an ayahuasca ceremony, I was speaking with a woman from the ceremony who was from Kazakhstan. Yes, Kazakhstan is a real place and it has existed long before Borat made it famous. But anyway, we were speaking and she said something that really struck me. At one point, she said, "I am from Kazakhstan. But I am not just from Kazakhstan. I am Kazakh. I am of this land. It is my blood." And that might not be the best accent, but the way she said it really, really hit me. She spoke as if she was physically made up of the people and the land she comes from, a part of a long line of ancestors, and it was clear she would rather be from no other place. And I knew right away that I needed to portray this concept in the story. That it wasn't just about creating a land known as Okablo. It was really about what it means to be Okablo. And there's a lot more to say about this idea. But in short, we might not be from Okablo, but that doesn't mean we can't all be Okablo. Because Okablo is a commitment to something greater. It's a set of principles and characteristics. It's a type of person. It's a way of being. I believe the Okablo spirit lives inside all of us. And I know we can live in a way that would make the people of Okablo proud. What exactly is that type of person and way of being? And how do we bring the Okablo spirit to the modern world? Well, those are the answers that we're seeking and exploring. And if you want to be a part of that, stay tuned for more.
We walked into the amphitheater where everyone was meeting for the beginning of orientation. It was quite a crowd, and as we made our way through it, I looked around at everyone trying to imagine how they had gotten here and what their experience has been like so far. Everyone seemed very excited and upbeat. It was a positive energy in the air, for sure. Pono explained to me that we'd be getting to know most of the professors and getting to sample some classes tomorrow. Finally, we were stepping into my wheelhouse. I sat right in the front row, as I always do, and took out my notebook and pen so I could jot down notes. A moment later, everyone was invited to find their seats as a man stepped out onto the stage. He was an elderly man with dark, wrinkled skin, yet he looked healthy as can be. He moved slowly across the stage, carrying himself with immense pride. He had an Aztec print shawl draped over his shoulder, with a long beaded necklace and feather earrings. He reminded me of an indigenous chief, very stoic. He introduced himself as Chief Inganyama, a name I recognized from the conversation between Pono and Machuca just before. He's the founder of Project Delphinius and commended us all for participating in such an important mission. After his short speech, he turned it over to the panel of professors. I was extremely impressed with the team. At this point, I was not expecting anyone here to be formally educated or trained, so I was pleasantly surprised. There was an MIT professor, a former NASA spokesperson, an acclaimed author, and an archaeologist, to name a few. Nothing against the others, but this was more of my crowd, and it was now making a little more sense why I might have been a direct recruit. Each of the professors was directly recruited to be a part of this project in the early stages. It's a shame I can't sample them all. After the introductions were over, I hung around to chat with a few others in the audience. There was such an array of participants, I couldn't seem to pinpoint a common theme among us all. I met a husband and wife from inner city Chicago. She was a public school teacher and he was a police officer. I also met an accountant who worked with private businesses, a retired grandmother who spends most of her days planting in her garden and helping take care of her young grandchildren, and Charlie, a 40-ish-year-old man who dropped out of college on September 12, 2001, to enlist in the Marines. As the crowd was beginning to file out, I was approached by Dr. Siri, the former NASA spokesman who teaches the Science of Source class. "Hello, Sandra?" he asked. "I'm Yabud." "Oh, it's Sandra," I replied, "but yes, that's me." "I apologize. I wasn't aware of the pronunciation." "Oh, no, it's fine. It happens every day," I answered with a chuckle. Dr. Siri was a small, elderly Eastern man, maybe from India or Sri Lanka or something. He also had a large chunk missing in one of his ears, as if it had been bitten off or cut off. He had a tiny hint of an accent, just enough to know that English was not his native language, but was completely fluent. This made sense when I thought about how long ago he left his homeland, as he mentioned being involved in NASA in the late 50s as a young man. "I'm really happy you are here," he shared. "I knew this was the right class to invite you, now that your project is wrapped up and you have some time off." I was extremely confused. How did he know me already, and how did he know about my work project? You know about my research?" I asked. "Of course. I'm very familiar with everything being worked on at Mantech," he explained. "I keep tabs on it all." "But there's nothing public about the project," I answered. "In fact, most of it's classified." "I have a few highly trusted contacts in very close proximity to this project and many others," he said. "I was personally involved in the creation of the modern science hierarchy in the 50s and 60s. You know, when the kings appointed themselves," he explained with a sarcastic chuckle and head shake as we stepped away from the crowd. "Ultimately, I was removed from that hierarchy and from modern science altogether. But through this program, I've been able to reestablish and maintain relationships with key players." I sort of just froze. I was not expecting to meet someone so familiar with my work who I had never met before. However, I trusted that he was someone I could learn from and work well with. Otherwise, he wouldn't be in this position. Plus, it's hard to fly under the radar when your company is owned by a high-profile billionaire like Winston Byrd, and you have some of the richest people in the world buying enormous shares of the business, he continued as he leaned closer to me. "Clearly, these people believe there is a lot to gain from your work." "I think the whole world has a lot to gain from our work," I replied. "We are on the forefront of modern medical advancement." He smiled and kindly replied, "And I look forward to having some more in-depth discussion about it all soon." "That would be nice," I replied. I saw Pono across the way wave me over as if to say it was time to head out. Yabud and I both saw her, and I nodded back, signaling, "Be there in a moment." "But how did you find me?" I asked, now very curious. "Well, you stand out in your field without a question. You would not be at the head of the department otherwise," he began. "And you don't have to look far to find your other accolades, which are quite impressive for anyone, but especially of someone your age." I smiled and probably blushed a little as I received his compliments. "Well, thank you. I appreciate that," I responded. "Can I count on you being in my class tomorrow?" he asked. "It's the only class with the word science in the title, right?" I joked. "Of course I'll be there." "Fantastic. I'll see you then." Arriving back at Pono's house, I was giddy with excitement about tomorrow's classes. Knowing that Dr. Siri had hand-selected me felt good, I must admit, and I'm eager to experience his class. I went and sat outside on the back porch, a place that was quickly becoming my favorite thinking spot, and looked over the schedule and the class list for the next 2 days. A short while later, Pono came outside to join me. She stood next to me and glanced over my shoulder. "Have you decided which classes you'd like to sample tomorrow?" she asked. "I have one for sure, but I'm still figuring out the second," I answered. "Okay, let's talk it through," she suggested. "Have you narrowed it down at all?" Sort of, I guess. I'm pretty much down to either Language of the Gods, which is the mathematics class, or the movement workshop." "Elaborate for me," she replied, as she settled beside me and placed an arm around my shoulders. "Well, math is something I've always enjoyed, but it's not necessarily exciting. The thing that got my attention, though, was the explanation of the class. Tapping into universal wisdom through math is something I would have laughed at a week ago, but I'm coming around on that stuff," I said with a playful smile toward Pono, who sent one right back. "Also, it's an MIT professor, so it's kind of like, how do I not, you know?" "Okay, and what about the movement workshop? What pulls you in?" "Well, the instructor was... I don't even know how to explain it." "Handsome?" she giggled. "Well, yeah, that," I replied laughingly, but not just that. I felt something when I was watching him move on the stage, and the way he carried himself as he spoke. There was just something about it that made me feel like, I want that, you know? Pono replied quietly. Plus, you made it pretty clear to me yesterday that my physical condition could be better. So which one pulls you stronger? On paper, the math class makes the most sense, but intuitively speaking, the movement workshop feels right. Okay, now we are getting somewhere, she said. This is a great opportunity for you to repattern. Repattern? Yes, repattern, she answered. The first day you arrived here, you told me that you make all of your decisions based on logic and reason, right? That you don't let your emotions get in the way of important choices. Remember? Yeah, that's how I've always been. Well, if you want to always be the same, you can always do the same, she replied. But if you want to become something you've never been, you have to do what you've never done. Okay, so you're saying go with my gut? I'm saying if you want to be something you've never been, you have to do what you've never done. I took a moment to let that sink in while I looked at the schedule again. Okay, movement workshop it is, I responded. Beautiful. I think you're going to really enjoy it, she replied. And what was the other one? The easy choice. Oh, Dr. Siri's class, The Science of Source, I replied. I spoke with him briefly, and he invited me to join in. He was the person who recruited me into this project in the first place. Pono didn't reply at first. Are you sure you're ready for his class? It can be pretty intense for someone who's not familiar with him. Intense? How so? He's going to challenge you. Let's just say that. I'm up for a challenge, I replied confidently, especially in the realm of science. Science of source, she answered, emphasizing the source part. This is going to be a little different than what you are probably imagining. I just want you to know that. Can you elaborate a little? A moment ago, you were encouraging me to try new things. Now it seems like you're doing the opposite. Well, I know science is your world, she began, and it's his world too, but he's been in it a lot longer, and he's been involved with some very powerful people. Remember, he did get blacklisted from the scientific community forever. That doesn't happen without some strong and, let's say, unfavorable opinions. But his story is what I want to hear. I want to connect with him on that level. He invited me here, and it only makes sense to explore what he has to offer me. Is that coming from your head or your heart? She asked. Both, I replied. I can actually feel it in my whole being. Okay then, sounds like you are ready. I am. Benza kili